music.
What's up? This is Abe Zucca. This is part 9 of Recursive Radicalism of Nick Fuentes. We're gonna start this section, and we're more than halfway through. And this is the American Gnosis: algorithms, tribes, empires, disavowals, forbidden questions, and the digital archons. Thanks for the nice work. Let's see if we can get some people to ask some interesting questions instead of just me reading this book, just being a boring, pretentious asshole and reading a book. So let's begin.
Sorry, I don't have an answer for that.
Every empire ends in a quarrel over who speaks for the gods. The algorithm is the new oracle. Its punishments are the only punishments still feared. American politics is merely theology conducted by other means, in factions, rival cults, disputing the nature of sovereignty. The demiurge of speech, algorithms, platforms, and the archons of visibility. In the American Gnosis, the algorithm becomes the demiurge, an invisible pattern-devouring being that arranges the hierarchy of speech, arbitrates who is amplified, who is shadow-banished, who is fed to the swarm, and who is momentarily crowded with digital apotheosis, not by merit or truth, but by fluctuating appetites of an unseen computational hunger. The platform is no longer a marketplace, but a tribunal. And every post is an offering placed before a mechanized archon who rewards novelty, punishes forbidden signals, and treats nuance as pollutants in its optimizing matrix. Thus, the public square mutates into a liturgy governed by a non-human priesthood. Where once scholars debated in libraries, now influencers duel in latency, reduced arenas where the gods of engagement demand blood, confession, transgression, and sacrificial outrage. Those who refuse to provide it are forgotten, which is a fate worse than censorship in the Gnostic world. The algorithm does not censor, it purifies. It purifies the field by removing signals incompatible with its teleology, which is neither democratic nor moral, but simply economic. It selects for intensities, polarizations, and identity-marked speech, ensuring that the conversation grows more tribal as the empire grows weaker. To be recommended is the new form of divine favor. To lose recommendation is exile. To be mass reported is stoning. To trend is resurrection. Thus the old religious categories return, wearing the armor of technical matrix that pretend to be neutral while behaving like ancient oracles, rediscovering their taste for prophecy. Every user believes they are speaking freely, yet each is subtly coached by invisible feedback loops that reward extremity, penalize hesitation, and shape the metaphysics of an entire generation by teaching them that attention, not truth, is the highest good, and that virality is the sole measure of divine approval. The demiurge loves certainty, despises ambiguity, and hungers for absolute statements. Therefore, debates rarely evolve. They crystallize and intensify, become dogmatic positions that must be defended at escalating rhetorical costs, turning all discourse into a reenactment of ancient sectarian schisms. Those who master the algorithm imagine they have mastered power, but in truth, they have merely become interpreters of the archon's will, prophets of a machine's desire, priests of a computational cult that devours them as soon as their utility wanes. The algorithm tolerates no gray zones, for it finds them unprofitable. Thus, every complex question becomes binary, every nuance becomes treason to one faction or another, and every thinker is eventually forced into the posture of a zealot to preserve reach. What once lived in the esoteric schools, censorship, orthodoxy, initiation rites, now returns in digital form, where the new gatekeepers wear avatars instead of robes, and the archons no longer need to imprison bodies. It is enough to remove visibility, which is imprisonment of the soul. Truth decays under algorithmic conditions because it cannot compete with myth, spectacle, or grievance. The demiurge rewards what spreads fastest, and grievance spreads fastest because it turns citizens into disciples of their own injury. If you guys have any questions, I am Abe Zucca. Check out my art at zuccagallery.com. Google the name Abe Zucca. Yes, this channel is very small, but it will get bigger. I'm not really into reading my writing so much. I want to get into conversation, see if we can build an army. Or something like that. A group. Okay? Every banned voice becomes a martyr. Every martyr becomes a new node of mythic energy that the algorithm cannot resist amplifying elsewhere. Thus, censorship paradoxically strengthens the very forces it seeks to contain. Thanks. It's the best artwork in Phoenix. I'm a writer too. I'm a professional painter, though. I make my money painting. The demiurge feasts upon conflict, not resolution. It rewards escalation, not prejudice. No, it rewards escalation, not prudence. Thus, political actors morph into performers whose highest skill is the ability to provoke both adoration and outrage simultaneously. The more powerful the algorithm becomes, the less the people believe in politics, for they intuit the real sovereignty is invisible, automated, and cosmically indifferent to their suffering, but absolutely attuned to their passions. When the algorithm selects a new villain, the crowd does not question, for the demiurge speaks in patterns the people have learned to treat as destiny, and destiny produces obedience faster than law. In the American gnosis, information is not knowledge, it is fuel, and the archons burn it to generate spectacles that bind citizens to their screens, ensuring that the real decision of empire occurs in the shadows where silence still reigns. To speak online is to carve one's identity in electric stone. To be misunderstood is inevitable. To be misused by the algorithm is unavoidable. Thus, every discourse becomes a ritual of self-sacrifice, performed before a machine that never sleeps. A praise-filled swarm and a hate-filled swarm are indistinguishable to the demiurge, for both produce the same result: attention, which is the nutrient upon which the empire's new spiritual economy runs. Those who flee visibility believe they have escaped judgment. But judgment is ambient now, diffused across 1 million feeds, and every citizen carries a portable tribunal that demands constant testimony in the form of posts, comments, and reactions. The final tragedy of the algorithmic age is this. The more data the archons gather, the less the citizens know about themselves, for every reflection is distorted by a machine that interprets humanity through the lens of engagement, not essence. The tribes of empire. America as theology, Zionism as sigil, Zionism as sigil, libertarianism as heresy, identitarianism as countermyth. America no longer behaves like a nation-state, but like a polytheistic empire, each faction offering worship to its own god. Security, sovereignty, equality, identity, Israel, free markets, each god demanding blood sacrifices in the form of elections, alignments, and personal ruin. The Israel question becomes the empire's forbidden text, the book of hours that every priesthood must either publicly recite or publicly avoid. The avoidance itself becomes a confession, and the confession becomes a political brand. In the American gnosis, pro-Israel and anti-Israel cease to be policy positions. They become metaphysical orientations, indicators of one's eschatology, tribe, and willingness to defy the archons who police the boundaries of acceptable blasphemy. Libertarianism approached the empire with surgical precisions, attempting to separate the machinery of war from the machinery of power. But they fail to realize that power is never separable from myth, and myth is never separable from identity. Identitarians approach the empire as anthropologists discovering a fallen temple. They see tribes instead of policies, rituals instead of institutions, and conclude that the empire is not governed by laws, but by compelling genealogies of memory and fear. The empire tolerates multiple factions, but not multiple metaphysics. Thus, the great threat is not a political dissident, but a figure who introduces new cosmologies, one that destabilizes the relationship between citizens, identity, and state. Evangelicals worship Israel as the site of their revelation. Zionists defend Israel as the site of their survival. Identitarians oppose Israel as the site of perceived domination. Libertarians critique Israel as the site of misallocated sovereignty. Yet all four agree that Israel is central, which is proof of the empire's true theological structure. Every tribe claims to be American first, but each defines America according to different sacred narratives. Some see a Republican covenant, others a Christian one, others a civic dream, and still others a racial memory. Thus, the term becomes a contested scripture rather than a shared political principle. The young become the shock troops of the American gnosis, not because they are radical, but because they are unmoored. Raised in an empire of collapsing narratives, they cling to extremities as a surrogate for meaning and embrace forbidden questions as rights of personal sovereignty. When the empire weakens, tribal gods reawaken, and each demands that its followers reinterpret the past in mythic terms. Some resurrect the Holocaust as eternal warning, others resurrect Christendom as lost inheritance, and still others resurrect a libertarian Eden before the expulsion into empire. The clearing ritual and the war for speech. Gatekeeping, accusation, tribal permission, and fragile architectures of the American dialogue. Every conversation begins with a blood sacrifice. Tell me what you are not before one may speak of what one is. Reputation is no longer earned, it is negotiated before an audience that demands confession as the price of listening. Accusation is the ambient weather of the political age, and dialogue survives only where both parties agree not to weaponize the storm. The ground ritual of permission, the opening liturgy required before speech may begin. Every modern conversation begins with a purification rite, a pre-dialogical sacrament in which the accused is asked to renounce the demons assigned to him. racists, misogynists, fed extremists, so that the exchange may proceed without the audience demanding blood before it hears meaning. This ritual is not a courtesy but a structural necessity in an age where reputations are fabricated through fragments, clipped moments, and algorithmic hallucinations. One must first fight the ghost summoned in one's name before one can utter a single substantive claim. The clearing of accusations paradoxically reveals the extent of the power struggle. No one is asking what one believes, only what one denies. For the empire has learned that denial is more binding than affirmation, and that confession under duress is the most valuable currency in the marketplace of perception. The interviewer's promise, "I will not take cheap shots once you are gone," is less a gesture of goodwill than a treaty between fragile sovereignties, a temporal suspension of war so that the borders of identity may be surveyed without artillery fire. When two public figures agree to treat each other at face value, they are not declaring friendship but refusing to join the reputational death cult that feeds on innuendos, tribal rumor, and the weaponized misunderstanding that fuel the digital court of public opinion. The rapid-fire absolutions do you hate Jews? Do you want genocide? Are you a Fed? Function as exorcisms. Their speed reveals their artificiality, yet their performance satisfies the audience's demand that taboo categories be publicly managed before a civil speech is permitted. An accusation refuted does not vanish, it lingers as a shadow attached to the name, a spectral contaminant that must be repeatedly cleansed before the public no longer seeks truth but reassurance that the world's villains are known and cataloged. The clearing ritual is the new price of good faith. Without it, the audience interprets disagreement as moral depravity, and the conversation collapses into the predictable dramaturgy of outrage that platforms increasingly demands as tribute. The ritual also reveals that modern political actors do not fear being wrong, they fear being mischaracterized, for mischaracterization is the weapon that destroys access, not arguments. Those who refuse the clearing ritual are punished not because they are guilty, but because they deny the audience its sacrament. And a denied sacrament transforms viewers into inquisitors. Thus, the first act of any controversial figure is not to persuade, but to survive the purification sequence long enough for his actual position to enter the conversation, a feat increasingly rare in the age of weaponized narrative shortcuts. In this way, the ground ritual becomes the true battlefield of American discourse, and whoever dictates its rules dictates the entire conversation that follows. The economy of accusation. How reputations are fabricated, traded, and destroyed. Accusations now function as economic tools, enabling platforms, donors, media conglomerates, and rival creators to control the market of attention by defining who is safe and who is profitable and who must be removed from circulation. An accusation today is not a claim, it is a weaponized metadata tag, a label that platforms can read, advertisers can fear, and the enemies can deploy without evidence. Because it is an algorithmic hive, emotion is data, and data is destiny. The real scandal is not whether someone committed the alleged offense, but the machinery of accusation has replaced due process. Reputational guilt is now determined by virality rather than verification. Those who launch accusations often believe they are defending the public, but they are in fact defending the narrative systems that depend on unchallenged categories like anti-Semite, misogynist, fed, or dangerous extremists to maintain their priestly authority. Every accusation feeds a silent economy. Platforms profit through controversy, donors through compliance, media outlets through outrage, and rival creators through the elimination of competitors. Thus, the economy of accusation sustains itself through constant escalation. Once an accusation sticks, even if refuted, it forms a new mythic layer around the target, who must now speak through a membrane of suspicion that reshapes how all future statements are interpreted. The audience participates willingly in the economy because accusations have an intoxicating sense of moral clarity, allowing spectators to feel virtuous without the burden of understanding complexities. To be falsely accused in such a system is to be initiated into an involuntary spiritual trial, where one must learn to speak not only to adversaries but to echo chambers, automated amplification structures, and algorithmic judges. Ironically, those most often accused, those whom the system labels as radioactive, develop the most disciplined rhetorical strategies, for they must weigh every word against the possibility of misinterpretation weaponized at scale. The innocence or guilt of the accused has little relevance. The accusation itself becomes a performance of power, a ritual through which one faction asserts dominance over another. Accusation often serves to distract from structural critique by reducing systemic issues to the alleged deviance of individuals. Institutions avoid confronting the contradictions that create the conflict in the first place. The most dangerous accusation is not the one that ruins reputation, but the one that restructures alliances, forcing individuals to choose between integrity and survival, truth and affiliation. The accused often discover that reputational death produces its own kind of freedom. When one has already been banished, one is liberated from the need to appease the tribunal. Thus, many dissidents emerge precisely from those who were permanently condemned. Accusations become the crucible through which counter-movements are forged. What appears to be moral environment is in fact a marketplace of reputational commodities. And the audience is not judging truth, but consuming spectacle. And let's leave on this final section. In such an economy, the only sustainable defense is radical clarity and insistence on speaking directly, transparently, and at length, even when the system incentivizes brevity, ambiguity, regime-approved slogans. In such an economy, the only sustainable defense is radical clarity and insistence on speaking directly, transparently, and at length, even when the system's incentivizes brevity, ambiguity, and regime-approved slogans. That is part 9 of the Recursive Raducalism of Nick Fuentes. Socratic Groyper Axioms. We're on page 300. There's probably about 150 pages left. Check out my art at zuccagallery.com. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys later.